Phew, this is going to get expensive. Welcome back and thanks for being here. And my name is Scott and I have an expensive problem to share with you. Thankfully, it's not with my car, it's with my daughter's. Should I be thankful for that? I don't know. So I got a text message from my daughter about 2 weeks ago. She is a Marine stationed in North Carolina and she has a check engine light. She did not have a scan tool at the time, so I just advised her to just go to AutoZone or some sort of auto store, and most of them will scan your car for nothing. So she had the car scanned, number 3 cylinder misfire. So she swapped the coil pack, could not swap the spark plugs. Although she has tools, she's recovering from shoulder surgery. And so she can't reach out. I mean, even driving the stick at this point is hard for her, much less torquing with a wrench or anything. And I know some of you guys are like, oh, come on, it's so easy. It's not that much torque on a spark plug, but still it's the reaching that she cannot do. And so I am not aware, and neither is she aware, of any German car specialty shops in her area. I think there's one down in Wilmington, but that's over an hour from where she is, and we did not want to take the car that far with its problem. So against my better judgment, I said, hey, just take it to the dealer. It can't be that hard for them to diagnose and repair. So she took it to the dealer. They were booked up. They said they'd get to it in about a week. And so about a week later, they texted her. Oh, that is a rant on its own. This dealership, they never answer the phone. You can't get anybody on the phone to save your life. When the dealership finally did get her car in and have a look, they swapped the coil packs and they swapped these spark plugs. Here's where the misunderstanding started. They said, hey, we recommend replacing the number 3 injector. I had made an assumption. Again, they are doing everything via text. So let's imagine this for a moment. You've got a mechanic who really is not a mechanic. These guys are technicians these days. They're just throwing parts at a car. So the technician tells a service advisor what he did. The service advisor may or may not understand what the technician did because he or she may or may not have any mechanical knowledge whatsoever. And in this case, I don't think this service advisor did have much mechanical knowledge. And no offense to her, it's just the nature of the business. Some people go into these management positions and they just don't know what their technicians are doing. I'm not saying that's good, bad, okay, or not. That's just the reality of what's happening out there. So then she has to take that information and then perhaps dumb it down to what a customer can understand. And my daughter, being a mechanic herself, she works on diesel power plants. She understands a lot, but she's only being given this much information, which then she forwards to me. So I'm getting it third or fourth hand. So the assumption that I made was based off of this. You might recall that I had a very similar problem about 2 years ago. I was on the road. I wasn't stranded, but I was all the way out in California, nowhere near familiar services. I had no idea who worked on these cars other than the dealership, so I went to a dealership up in Fresno. They swapped coil packs, swapped spark plugs, and then they did a compression test and a leak down test to verify the health of the engine, and they even sent a bore scope into each cylinder to make sure everything was cool with the cylinders. Were they soaking me for money doing all that? I don't know, but they did it, and then they went down the wrong path. They wanted to replace the fuel pump and a bunch of other stuff. Check out the video I made on that up here. I don't want to bore you with all of that, but they went down the wrong path, and then I took my car out of there. This dealership, I made the assumption before they recommended replacing a fuel injector that they had checked compression, leak down, verified a healthy engine, otherwise healthy engine. They did not, but we didn't know that. A poor assumption on my part. So they went in to replace the number 3 fuel injector, and of course, because the engine has 110,000 miles on it, ish, they recommended cleaning the intake. All right, clean the intake. That's a fair thing to do. They cleaned the intake, they replaced the injector, and then they said, oh, Yeah, the injector didn't fix it. We recommend a compression and leak down test. So at that point, I'm like, what? You mean you didn't do that already? And they're not talking directly to me. They're talking to her, texting her, I should say. No direct verbal communication. So she says, yes, do it. And I concurred. So she's passing this stuff back and forth to me. So come next to close of business on Friday, she gets a text message that says, and this is not the kind of message you want to get via text. This is where picking up the phone would have been nice. The text message says, hey, we did not do the leak down test, so we're going to knock $150 off of your bill, but we did the compression test and you have only 50 psi on the number 3 cylinder. You're going to need an engine. And that was it. Nothing else. No explanation, no nothing. And then, of course, by the time my daughter got this, the dealership had closed. So she's in a panic, naturally. I am kind of peeved that is how they're doing business. And how can you just jump straight to an engine? Couldn't it be a head gasket or maybe a bad ring or something else other than the entire engine? Regardless, even if the car needs an engine, there's no way that I'm going to let them do it. So I had already started making plans to go down there and get her car with a U-Haul truck and trailer rental. I tried calling the dealership Saturday, the next day, right? And the dealership was open. And this is when I learned the true suckiness of their service. They don't answer the phone. Of the numbers that they had listed either in Google Maps or their own website, one phone number just rang 15 times and then busied out. Another phone number went to an automated attendant that then said, unable to connect your call. And then another number went to a voicemail. And then, of course, they didn't answer my call. I even used a little bot on their website that says, hi, I'm Matt. How can I help you? And I clicked the little menus to get to a service thing and said, please contact me for this. And they didn't contact me. Truly terrible service. My daughter texted the service advisor on Monday and said, hey, my dad would like to talk to you. We're going to take the car, so get it ready for pickup. And my dad wants to talk to you, so please call him. She said she'd call, and that was at like 8 o'clock in the morning. I finally got a call at 6 that evening. She explains to me what they did, why they did it, and then I explain, this is not right. Your mechanic did everything wrong after swapping the coil pack and spark plug, and we shouldn't have to pay for any of that. She kind of sympathized with what I was saying, but was unable to change the bill. She needed to talk to her service manager for that, and that I understood. So I asked that he call me in the morning while I'm driving down there, and she said she would get him to do it, and of course he did not call me. I got there at about 1:30, and she told me that he authorized her to knock a few hours of labor off of the bill. So the bill had worked its way up to $1,700 plus. No way were we paying that. So he told her to knock a few hours of labor off the bill, but she hadn't done it yet. So I got to stand around and watch her click, 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 type, 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 click, 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 type, type, type. Probably 5 or 10 minutes of her clicking and typing, and then she says, all right, so the bill is now $1,100. And I just looked at her and I said, that is not enough. That is ridiculous that I'd have to pay for anything after swapping the spark plugs. Because you're telling me that you want me to pay for an intake cleaning that's just going to go back to Volkswagen as a course so that some bench technician doesn't have to clean it? I shouldn't have to pay for any of that. So she asked if I wanted to talk to the service manager, and I said yes. So here's part of the problem with their terrible customer service. North Carolina, I think, perhaps for political reason, it's still one of those places that people aren't going back to work, and so they are all shorthanded down there. So she, even on a Monday, was the only service advisor there. There was nobody else in the whole area. Of course, they had cashiers in the cashier booth, and nobody's answering the phones, but there's people there to take your money. The service manager was not present because he was over at the co-located Subaru dealership. Apparently their service advisor or service manager was either off that day or they didn't have one. And so now the VW guy's working both shops at the same time. So I walked over to the Subaru dealership. She apparently called him and front-loaded him. He came out to the parking lot and met me, and then I argued with him a little bit. In the end, I will share this part of my conversation. When she brought in the car, if the technician had run a diagnostic and then did the compression test, he would have found the compression test right away, or excuse me, the compression problem right away, and then there would have been no valve cleaning or injector.
Yeah.
And right now, I feel like anything that I do to support the valve cleaning and the injector, all of that's just going back to Volkswagen when I turn in a core. While we were walking back to the dealership, he then explained why the technician got it wrong. And let me share this with you. You tell me what you think.
The issue being is they have a test plan they have to follow. That comes from Volkswagen. They send us a test plan. And the test plan has them, run the codes, see what the codes is. The codes was for misfire.
Yep.
On, I forgot which cylinder.
3, yeah.
Cylinder 3, he pulls it off, he looks up in the intake's gummed up. So they tell us to do an intake clean and that injector replacement.
Okay.
That's the order they have us go in. Once we do that, if it starts worse misfires, then they have us go in and do the compression test, which we have to sell to y'all.
Sure. In short, what he said was even a 20-year seasoned mechanic / technician has to follow the troubleshooting flow charts provided by Volkswagen, which mandates that he swap the coil, swap the spark plug, clean the intake, then replace the injector, then go to the compression test. Well, if that's true, then why didn't the service advisor tell me all of that when I talked to her on Monday? And why didn't she say it again when I talked to her on Tuesday? And why didn't the guys out there in California do that? A mechanic that I know says, no, that's nonsense. There's no way that's accurate. Post below what you think of that. We got into the dealership, and the service advisor was pretty stunned when he said, get rid of all the labor. The part then, the injector alone was $285. That is up from the $150 that I paid when I was in California. Supply chain shortage, is he marking up the part? Is he, what's going on here? I would not know until I got home. But here is why it just didn't matter to me. The car went in for a problem. They diagnosed it incorrectly, of course, but even if they had diagnosed the car correctly, the car would have been rolled into the shop, hooked up to a scanner, test driven, swap the coil pack, swap the spark plug, clear the code, test driven, find the code. Then maybe run the compression test, the leak down test, and then they would have said, oh, you've got 50 pounds on your number 3 cylinder, you need an engine. That still would have resulted in at least 2 hours of labor diagnostic charge. Their labor rate was $155 an hour. So if they had billed me only for labor, it still would have been over $300. The part was $285 plus tax. That came out to about $305. So I got out of there with a $305 bill versus $1,700 plus. Because the dealership in the end did the right thing, I'm not going to name them here on this video and call them out and try to make them look bad. But at the same time, I'm also not going to call them out and praise them for doing the right thing, because they would have gladly taken my $1,700 if I hadn't made a stink about it. So they deserve neither recognition for either way. My daughter was pretty happy about that. We went to dinner that night, and usually when we go to dinner, I pay, she paid. She says, you just saved me $1,400. So she bought dinner. That was a nice surprise. We then got out of the dealership, loaded our car up onto a U-Haul. That was a fiasco all on its own. We needed to remove the bumper in order to get it strapped down properly. The bumper's in the back of her car, and I brought it back to Yorktown, and now it sits with a mechanic, Europros of Yorktown, Virginia, a place that I trust to diagnose properly. I believe that the car will need an engine, and one thing I do know is I don't want any dealer to change that engine. By the way, for shock value, I always get a quote from the dealer. That way I can appreciate the independent quote just a little bit more. The dealer down there in North Carolina quoted around $7,500 for a used engine and $10,200 for a new engine. My mechanic will very likely charge me full retail for the engine, and that's understandable. He's got to make money too, right? But even what he charges added to the cost of the U-Haul and trailer rental is still going to be far less expensive than what any Volkswagen dealership is going to charge me. So yeah, so that's where the car sits right now. Comment below, would you replace an engine on a 7-year-old car that you really enjoy? I have my thoughts on what happened to this engine, and I will share that in a follow-up video. And I will also tell you my thoughts on replacing an engine, because this car, everything I've done to it, if it needed an engine, I think I'd replace it. And I'll tell you why in a follow-up. As always, I appreciate you being here, and I will see you next time. Take care.